Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Go ahead, find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You won't want to miss today's show. At 7 o'clock, we are going to be doing an interview with a resident from the Shelbourne Beach, the corner there. They're doing an Essex housing project. And, my main question is what would a large like apartment complex. That's what this is. It looks like it's about 3 stories, and it's going to be erected right smack dab in the middle of a single family residential area. The noise, the traffic congestion, the violence, the crime, the drugs, privacy concerns, and not to mention this is a big old eyesore. It's going to be towering over these much smaller residential homes. It's going to be blocking this beautiful view that they've currently got of the horizon. And there's a lot of questions I have because it's like, wait a second. But there's all kinds of projects planned. Okay, I don't think that there's anybody would fight me on this. There's all kinds of housing projects that have been stalled or have not yet been developed. And that raises a lot of eyebrows. Why are we approving? And now I bring this up because May 8th is the Planning Commission. This project goes before the Planning Commission, and then ultimately it'll go before the council, because we know that the Planning Commission is probably just going to rubber stamp this. And there was a letter sent, of course, to Mercy Davison on April 14th from Collie Ridge residents requesting a meeting with the developer in the town of Normal. And hey, the public wants to kind of ask questions about this. What are we looking at here as far as the development? Now, Farnsworth Group, which I believe is like some sort of consulting company, and it really, the developer is Worthington LLC, which is managed by Young America Realty, and they are consulting. They consult with Farnsworth Group. Farnsworth is interesting. According to Open Secrets, we know that our Farnsworth, this group, this consulting group, has donated and contributed to coffers of Democrat and Republican politicians. Democrat Jay Hoffman, Jason Barrickman, former Senator Thaddeus Jones, who is currently under a multi-year federal investigation for tax issues revolving around his campaign funds. And yeah, this is when I see things like this, I'm just like, I wonder if they're going to the town of Normal, considering that actually Young America Realty, the president, his name is Andy Netzer or something like that. Andy Netzer, yeah. So he's the president and managing broker at Young America Realty. He's doing this. So obviously it's probably going to be like student housing of some kind. He has donated to 3 members of the council in a personal capacity, okay? Andy Byers, Kathleen Lorenz, and Scott Preston. And, you start to wonder, are they actually interested in the residents there? Do they care about the input from the residency that currently exists there at Collie Ridge? We're going to get to the bottom of this because we're going to have residents on for a few days, actually. I'm going to take the 7 o'clock hour and interview a couple of residents over the next couple of days who are going to be affected by this massive apartment complex. I think it's like 200 plus apartments, is 250 apartments and townhomes in that area near Shelbourne Drive and Beach Street, right there, smack dab in the middle of Normal. And I bring this up, hey, considering that there has been, this old ISU student housing, which is not too far from there, there's, it's not full. There's still listings available, I'd imagine, in multiple apartment complexes. There's a large development on Parkside north of College, which is still farm ground. There hasn't been any kind of development. There was an approved plan for RAB east of Linden, and there's been no development to date, other than essentially moving some brush around and and getting rid of some old buildings there. But a lot of development seems to be paused or stalled. And I don't know if it's because these developers are, hitting some red tape, but it seems like Democrats want to build. And then Republicans, they get caught with this red tape. But like I said, in Illinois, it's like the Republicans and the Democrats, they're all friends. They're all getting the money from the same exact people. And I don't know about you, but anytime, and I'm not accusing anybody of this, but everybody's going to think if you're not building anything, construction costs, right? Is there money laundering going on? Or is there some sort of nefarious activity going on? You're planning, and then they never get built. Then the public starts to question what the hell is going on here with all of these housing projects that are always in the planning stages. I mean, what's going on? So we're going to get to the bottom of all of it. We're going to interview some residents, how they feel about this proposed housing project. And I've got so much to get to, though, before the 7 o'clock hour. I do want to talk about the tragic incident that occurred yesterday in Chatham. There was an SUV that crashed. Well, a person crashed and was driving an SUV. This was an actual person. I have no idea what the suspect looked like, who the suspect is. All I know is that this individual crashed into the Why Not After School camp, and it resulted in the death of children ages 14 to 18. Okay, and 18. So it ranged there, and there was multiple individuals struck outside of the building before ultimately the individual driving the car crashed into the building, the structure, and exited through the west wall. So several people were injured. They were transferred to hospitals. In fact, one person was taken via flight. One child was taken via flight because all of the deaths, or no, there were several injuries. All of the deaths in this incident were children. So tragic. Driver was alone in the vehicle, unharmed, was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Authorities have not yet disclosed the driver's identity. J.B. Pritzker got out there on social media and urged the community to support one another during this difficult time. Let's take a listen to the press conference. This is important. My prayers are with the family. This is a truly heartbreaking event. There were children who died, 4 of them. And I hope that the community pulls together, finds the strength, pulls together in unity. And the main thing is to pursue the safety of children. It's going to break my heart if we find out that the suspect had priors and he shouldn't have been out on the street. Somebody truly deranged should have or would have done this. That's what I'm saying. And I'd be shocked to find out if this was a first offense. Let's take a listen here to the press conference. Here we go.
Good evening. I'm Deputy Chief Scott Tarter with the Chatham Police Department. Unfortunately, this evening, I'm standing in front of you to give you updated information regarding the tragic loss of multiple lives here in Chatham this afternoon. At approximately 3:20 p.m., Chatham Police personnel, along with Chatham Fire and multiple outside agencies, responded to the Why Not After School camp, which is an after-school type daycare located at 301 Breckenridge Road here in Chatham. That is the scene where a vehicle drove into the east side of the building. The vehicle struck multiple persons outside of the building before continuing through the building and exiting out on the west side of the structure. At this time, we can confirm that there are 4 fatalities, 3 that were struck outside of the building before the vehicle entered, and 1 inside. Several patients have been transferred to local area hospitals by ambulance and 1 by life flight helicopter. The driver and sole occupant of the vehicle was uninjured and transported to an area hospital for evaluation. The Chatham Baptist Church at 1500 East Walnut Street in Chatham is the reunification point for families. And right now, traffic on Walnut Street in between Park Street and Gordon Drive will remain closed until further notice.
Okay, so I want to play a little bit of that press conference. It's very, very important that I share this story with you. It's gripping really the nation. Our hearts go out to the community, and I really do hope that they pursue a safer Illinois, a safer Chatham, for the future of our kids. I really do hope that the community pulls together. And I don't know anything about the suspect. Like I said, I'd be shocked to find out if this was a first offense, somebody truly deranged had to have crashed into a daycare. Okay, this is essentially an after-school camp. It's a daycare for kids. So tragic. So there's a couple of things I want to get to in the 6 o'clock hour before we get into the housing project. And we're going to be interviewing some residents from the Shelbourne Beach area. So it's it's called the Essex housing project, an Essex housing project. It's going to be built on the northeast corner of Shelbourne and Beach. And it's undeveloped land right now, and it's right next to the Collie Ridge subdivision. And there's Collie Ridge residents who are going to be joining me. So various subdivisions are around there. So throughout the rest of this week, we're going to be talking with some of these residents. We're looking at like a 3-story apartment building. And this is a lot. I think it's like 19, near 20 3-story apartment buildings. It's going to be like over, I think, 250 apartment units is what they're talking about. This is ginormous. Okay. And my problem is that there seems to be like a lot of these housing projects that have not gone up and they've been stalled. And this is interesting. The McLean County GOP put this out on social media. They said the housing shortage we're seeing in Illinois is the fault of the Democrat leadership in Springfield and local government overregulation and cost increases for contractors. So a lot of these projects have been planned, and I don't know why we're approving more and more projects. Maybe we should see if we continue to have the housing shortage after these things have gone up and after the projects are built, the actual units are built. Then if the units are built and people, fill these units, which I don't think will happen because there's already vacancies going on. There's vacancies in student housing. There's vacancies in multiple other apartment buildings around Bloomington Normal area. But McLean County GOP goes on. They say local government overregulation, cost increases for contractors. Quote, Illinois lawmakers continue to complain about the lack of housing across the state, in particular, affordable housing. We must build more housing in every Illinois community from Cicero from Sario to Chicago. I don't know. I think that's downstate. This is Governor J.B. Pritzker. He said that we've got to build housing in every single community, but lawmakers have no one to blame but themselves for this. The red tape, like I said, and the multifamily housings, they're limiting single family housing. There's restrictive zoning laws, fewer opportunities for housing. There's burdensome building regulations and permits, not to mention the country's highest property taxes make Illinois a national outlier in home building. So there's so much contributing to this so-called housing shortage, which I don't even really know, because if we were to just build what's planned, it probably would address, because there's a mass exodus of population, and they're saying that there's this housing crisis. Lawmakers and everybody across the state, and even your local leadership, is saying that there's this housing crisis. I find that hard to believe, in that is a mass exodus of population. Okay. But sure, if you want to say that we are in a housing crisis, well, let's actually address it then. Let's actually build the dang things that you approved, the planned projects that you approved. Let's build those things. Well, we can't because there's red tape. Now, it's interesting because these people are going to make all kinds of money, the contractors and BlackRock and some of these bigger developers. They're going to make all kinds of money once these things eventually go up. But the people who are making the money right now is the red tape. It's your Becky, who went to environmental science college and got a degree. And she now is, trying to figure out, the landscape and how to go about developing the land without destroying these, little ants or whatever, or the ant population, whatever. And she's, getting paid with taxpayer dollars. So I really do think it is a big scam. And it was orchestrated by, obviously, Governor J.B. Pritzker, who said we need to build more housing in every Illinois community. I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat, Cities 92.9. Yes, so we are going to be getting into this. I don't know why the Democrats are pushing this so hard, and then they say, oh, red tape. So I really think it's a huge scam to get Democrats to be rich, or at least the public or the public sector, the Environmental Protection Agency, a lot of these government agencies who have to conduct a study to figure out how developing that land is going to impact this tiny little ant or whatever, or how hammers are racist or whatever, you know what I mean? So I really think it's a big scam to try to line these people's pockets, because Becky, she studied, environmental science in college, and she's working on this project. And she's taking taxpayer dollars to work on this project to pass the study on to the developer, and to kind of dictate the way the developer should develop the land. I don't think they're serious. I don't think that there is actually I think it's fabricated. I think that this is a way for a ton of people to get money. And the longer they take, on a project, the more money everybody gets. Okay, obviously. So the longer Becky has to do her environmental studies, how that land is going to, be impacted by the developer, and she's going to be making her money. And then also the developers, the labor unions, right? They're going to get all kinds of money from doing this project and prolonging this project. You got to pay the guys per hour, and I don't know. I feel like this is all one big scam. Okay, because the same people who are saying the housing crisis is here and it's happening are the same people who block these houses from actually going up. So there must be some way that they can make money in between. And I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't dug into this as much as I would like to, but I'm telling you, something's not right here. Something does not pass the sniff test. All these people seem to be getting, money, but our housing, except, you're dealing with increased housing costs, and you're the one who's not making out like a bandit on these projects. So we're going to get to that. I will get to a few other things this morning. I want to get to the woke governor who signed this law providing assistance to first-time home buyers, only Black first-time home buyers, though. So obviously this is like, I don't even know how this is legal. This happened in Washington. Yes, Washington. Yeah, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson. He signed this law that would prioritize down payment assistance for first-time home buyers who have a certain skin color, by the way. So first-time home buyers who also are Black. So we're going to get to that. This Idaho mayor flies the pride flag despite a new state law in Idaho that you can only fly military flags, school flags, and the American flag outside of government buildings. There's a new state law. Illinois has a similar state law. And that you can't fly the flag upside down outside of government buildings, or else you're going to get fined, because, conservatives were doing that while Joe Biden was in office because the election was stolen. But the Idaho mayor is flying this gay pride flag, despite the law being very, very clear, the state law being clear that you cannot fly any other flag besides, military flags, the American flag, and school flags. We're going to get to that. Plus, Josh Hawley, he's reintroduced the Pelosi Act. And what this is, it bans members from trading stock, from stock trading. So we're going to get to all of that here on Conservative Cat. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Bob Ferguson. So you guys are really going to like this. He is the Washington governor, and he signed this bill. Here we go.
Feel free to step right up.
Yes,
Let's
you're
do
part
it.
of history now.
This is great.
Mhm.
Okay. Washington State's Covenant Homeownership Program provides down payment and closing cost assistance for lower income first-time home buyers. Lawmakers created the program to address the disproportionate impacts of racial redlining in Washington State. House Bill 1696 modifies the program by adjusting the area median income threshold for program eligibility, introducing loan forgiveness, and modifying the Oversight Committee membership. This modification will create more opportunities to close the racial homeownership gap, which is a very important goal for all of us here in Washington State.
Okay, so we're gonna get to the rest of this here when we come back for our radio friends, and I'm gonna play for you the sponsor of the bill. He signed the bill, Jamila Taylor. Her leadership in getting the bill passed, he thanked her, the governor did, and really her leadership was accusing Republicans of being racist if they didn't support the bill. And she made this really weird comment about how all the Republicans in Idaho in Washington wanted to call her monkey, which is just bizarre. So weird, this comment. I'll be right back. Hey, you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. You can always find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. There's a few things I want to get to here in the 6 o'clock hour. Woke governor signs a law providing assistance to first-time homebuyers. Oh, well, that's kind of nice. Isn't he such a nice guy? Only, of course, it's Black first-time homeowners or first-time homebuyers, which is illegal and discriminatory. I don't know how this got passed, and I'm sure that there's going to be lawsuits. But there's a little thing called equality under the law, by the way, and it's not legal to favor one race or another. And I'm anti, home assistance. I think if you don't have a down payment, clearly you cannot buy a home. So I always talk about this like loan consolidation. Sometimes people will take out a big loan and they'll try to pay off their credit cards. And, if you don't fix the behavior, you're going to wind up just racking up those credit cards again once you consolidate your loan. So then you have two forms of debt. And, if you don't fix your behavior, so if you give somebody a first-time home buyer, in this case, a Black first-time home buyer, if you give somebody down payment assistance, sure, okay, you give them down payment assistance, but if they don't actually spend their own money, they're going to expect, oh, my mortgage should be paid, or I'm not going to work, or I had this, I'm not going to work, I had my down payment assistance, I'm not going to work hard to pay my mortgage because I never had to learn the value of money. I mean, that's literally what this is. It's, coddling people, and it's not fixing the behavior. Like, if you cannot afford the down payment of a house, then you cannot afford to buy a house. Very simple. So I want to play this governor signing this bill. Take a listen to this clip, and then we're going to get to the bill's sponsor, because Bob Ferguson, the Washington state governor, I guess he didn't get the memo that, hey, there's equality under the law. You can't favor one race or another. And he signed this law that prioritizes down payment assistance to first-time home buyers if they have a certain skin color. Now, the sponsor of this bill, Jamila Taylor, he thanked her for her leadership, and she said some really wacky things trying to get this passed. Of course, by leadership, I mean she accused Republicans of being racist. Take a listen to this.
It's history now.
This is great.
So hold on.
Okay. Washington State's Covenant Homeownership Program provides down payment and closing cost assistance for lower income first-time home buyers. Lawmakers created the program to address the disproportionate impacts of racial redlining in Washington State. House Bill 1696 modifies the program by adjusting the area median income threshold for program eligibility, introducing loan forgiveness, and modifying the Oversight Committee membership. This modification will create more opportunities to close the racial homeownership gap, which is a very important goal for all of us here in Washington State. We so appreciate everybody who made this legislation possible. We know it's been, like any legislation, challenging.
Yes.
This one has its share of challenges, as we know.
Yes.
Okay, so I got to take a quick break, but we're going to get back. He looks over at Jamila Taylor and thanks her for her leadership. We're going to play her on the House floor because she makes a really weird comment about how Republicans want to call her monkey. Nobody called her monkey, but she makes this really weird comment about them wanting to call her monkey, and nobody ever did call her that. And I don't know, these Democrats, I'm telling you, it's just a wild bill. I'll be right back. let's play the rest of this.
But Representative Taylor has been a real champion of this legislation, and so we appreciate your leadership in particular. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm pleased to sign this legislation into law. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's take a photo.
1,
2, and 3. Congratulations.
Okay. So that's that clip. Now, I do want to share this woman on the floor where she says that that her Republican colleagues want to call her monkey. Nobody ever said that she was. She just got out on the House floor and accused, essentially her Republican colleagues of being racist. And that's her leadership on this bill that the governor thanked her for. So take a listen to this clip. Here we go.
Maybe they might want to call me a monkey today because I want to participate in our inclusive economy. This is getting ridiculous.
The people in my community are asking for restorative justice. They're asking for us to repair the harms that previous members of this institution, and I would dare to say, Mr. Speaker, some current members.
Maybe they might.
Okay, so much to unpack there. Really interesting how she says, many constituents of ours are seeking restorative justice. They're seeking for us to repair this ancestral wrong, I guess, of white people. Yeah, I bet they are. I bet that many constituents are asking for free money, despite not being discriminated against themselves. Okay, so I'm willing to go out on a wild guess here, and I'm just going to say that most likely the reason why these individuals do not have, a house or they can't afford the down payment assistance is income, their income status. So income driven, I would say, down payment assistance. I don't like it because, like I told you, if you are, unable to afford a home, and can't afford a down payment, most likely you're not going to be able to afford the home. And giving people, Jerry Springer checks, or just, checks, for simply not doing anything, you're doing more harm than good, because it's a behavioral problem. Most likely it's a spending problem. I'm going to be honest with you. Most financial struggles come from, I would say, spending issues. That's why conservatives, we're fiscally conservative, not to be stingy with your money, but be tight, have a budget, right? And these people, and I'm not saying these people as in skin color, but I'm talking about income status and financial status, not even really income status, because you can have a weak income but still afford a down payment. It's just going to take some finesse, right? Some budgeting skill. I'm no housing expert, but take this with a grain of salt. I think that probably the reason why you can't afford a down payment is because you spend money on garbage and on things that you don't need. So this is interesting. Here's what Representative Taylor said: expanding this program is a step closer to a step toward closing the homeownership gap between Black and white households in our state. It's not only a solution to the systemic inequalities caused by centuries of discrimination, but it is meaningful progress. Like I said, I don't think it has anything to do with race or the fact that there were ancestral wrongs committed against Black individuals centuries ago. Okay. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think that today, and I don't know why that is why it's affecting the Black communities. But according to a press release, currently 69% of white households in Washington own their homes compared to just 34% of Black households. This disparity persists. This is according to a press release from the state Democrats, across income levels, with most significant gap seen among households earning less than $50,000 annually. So yeah, like I said, most likely it's an income issue, but it's also probably a spending issue. And at the end of the day, if there is this racial gap, okay, that they're trying to address, you can't just provide people checks because of the color of their skin. Maybe do an income-driven down payment assistance program. Maybe, it's discriminatory. Okay, you can't give people money based on the color of their skin. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Here's the sponsor, and by her leadership on this bill, getting this bill passed in Washington, essentially what this bill does, it provides down payment assistance for first-time home buyers who have a certain skin color, which is so crazy to me because there's a little thing called equality under the law. But take a listen to the bill's sponsors. Here we go.
Want to call me a monkey today because I want to participate in our inclusive economy.
To be clear, none of her Republican colleagues called her a monkey. She just said this weird comment about them wanting to call her a monkey, but nobody did.
This is getting ridiculous.
The people in my community are asking for restorative justice. They're asking for us to repair the harms that previous members of this institution, and I would dare to say, Mr. Speaker, some current members.
Maybe they might.
Some current members. Yeah, we're just going to accuse Republicans of being racist, although there's no evidence to support that the Republican members of the General Assembly there were racist, and that's how they got them to bend the knee to support this or urge them to support this by accusing them of racism. According to a press release from the state Democrats launched in 2024, the Covenant Home Ownership Program provides zero-interest loans to help first-time home buyers cover down payments and closing costs. To date, the program has enabled 200 families in more than 20 counties across to access home ownership. Okay, so a lot of people are on this. I bet people are asking you for reparations in your districts. I'm sure that they're asking for free money. The question is, should you give them free money? If you give them their down payment assistance, and if you give them their down payment, likely they are unable to afford it because your income is either low or your spending habits need to be adjusted. And they're not going to increase their income, and they're not going to adjust their spending habits after you've given them this down payment assistance. And that doesn't change anything. Giving them it's enabling them. Giving these individuals this down payment assistance when they clearly can't afford a home, this is not compassionate. You're just going to ultimately have a problem with people paying off their homes. So, and they're like, well, let's fix this problem. And they've had this for a year now, and clearly it's not fixing the problem because currently 69% of white households in Washington own their homes compared to just 34% of black households. This disparity persists across income levels, with most significant gap seen among households earning less than $50,000 annually. Okay, so this is clearly an income problem. Okay, it means that there's just not enough income there, and I'm going to go on a wild guess here. I'm no housing expert, but your income status. Okay, it's that you need to correct that, and then you'll be able to afford the down payment on your home. Until you fix that, then you're never going to be able to afford a home, even if you get the down payment assistance. So, I mean, this has more to do with income status than it does with skin color, and income status is clearly up to the individual, right? If they decide, what job they're going to go in, if they're going to get a better job, if they're going to get a promotion, how they do at work, if they get the promotion, if they get the raise, it's clearly up to the individual income status. And then also, the whole spending issue. You can have a pretty small income, but still put down a down payment. I'd be curious what these people's financial records look like who need the down payment assistance. Are they, saving their pennies for the down payment assistance? Do they have a plan? Do they have a budget? Probably not. Okay. And if you don't fix those things, they're never going to be able to afford a home, even if you give them down payment assistance. So, yeah, this is just wild to me. They said, Representative Taylor, she said, expanding this program is going to close the homeownership gap between Black and white households. It's not only about the solution to systemic inequities caused by centuries of discrimination, but it's meaningful progress. So the expansion includes income eligibility raised from 100% of the area median income to 120%, loan forgiveness after 5 years for households earning 80% or less of the area median income, oversight committee membership. They changed to include representative of a nonprofit housing council organization. So that's parts of this bill. So the big thing here, the takeaway here is that after 5 years, their loan's forgiven. I mean, they can't afford the house. And really what they're doing here, they're trying to correct a wrong by doing it to other people. You're discriminating against people. You're not forgiving the 5-year loan of the white person. You're not, giving the down payment assistance to the white person. And, clearly, these people have never been discriminated against. This happened centuries ago. And, the loans are interest free, and then they're going to be forgiven after 5 years. This is insane. Hear me out. If you can't afford the down payment of a home, it's pretty clear that you're never going to be able to buy, or you're not ready to buy a home. Okay. If you can't afford the down payment. So the left doesn't seem to care, and they behave in blatantly racist ways. And they pretend to help these people, but in reality, these so-called victims probably have never experienced any kind of real hardship that they claim to have experienced, like overt racism, slavery, or anything like that, that would entitle them to these reparations. This is just blatantly you can't prioritize one person's skin color over another. Okay, you just can't do that. It's equality under the law. I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9.
Okay, I'm up, I think.
Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Oh, I must have muted myself. Okay. Dean, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Awesome.
It's great to be here.
Great. Well, I can hear you loud and clear. We're going to be back here in just a couple of minutes, and we're going to do our interview. Now, are you a Collie Ridge resident?
No, I live on Beach Street. I live 3 houses down from the corner of Shelbourne and Beach. So
Okay.
I live 3 houses to the south, which is right across from the boys' dorms on ISS, Normal One Plaza.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but I'm going to bring you back on for the radio here in just a couple of minutes. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay, I'll be right back. Welcome to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you being here. Yes, before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about the pride flag outside of the Boise City Hall. They're going to continue to fly it. The mayor, Lauren McLean, she said, hey, Idaho Attorney General, I really don't care if there's going to be possible legal action taken against me. I'm going to continue to fly it. And really, at the end of the day, what this is all about is exclusion. She's excluding the majority of the population. She claims that she's being inclusive, but really what she's doing, she's excluding the majority of the population, because we know that in the city of Boise, she's dedicated to a very, very small fraction of residents, obviously. And she's so desperate to fly this flag that barely represents a fraction of her residents. So she claims that she's focused on the people of Boise, but her actions speak louder than her words here, folks. And she's dedicated all of this time. Like, she wrote a two-page letter. I mean, like, you've got way too much time on your hands there, Mayor of Boise, Idaho. Again, like I said, it's evident that she doesn't intend to use her position for productivity and to actually help a resident. She'd rather, battle it out with the Idaho Attorney General over this pride flag issue for a fraction of her residents. But this is what they're stuck with there in Boise. I'm sorry. Boise residents. All right. I do want to switch gears. Let's talk about the Essex housing project. There could be noise, traffic, congestion, violence, crime, drugs, privacy concerns for the adjacent houses there. And this is going to be probably a big, big, giant eyesore. I'm going to be honest with you. 3 stories, 250 or so units, and you're going to disrupt this single family residential area by putting a big old multifamily housing area right there smack dab in the middle of this community. Now, I want to bring on our very special guest. His name is Dean. Dean, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Great. And Dean, tell us where exactly you live, and tell us a little bit about you and why you want to come speak on the show this morning.
Well, I live real close to this new subdivision. I just live a half a block away. I just live a few houses down from the intersection of Beach Street and Shelbourne. And so everything that happens there will very much affect my home, my family, and the life that we spend here because of the changes that are being made. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very concerned about what's going on here. And I've had some experience dealing with the city on other projects in our neighborhood. And to show that this isn't the first time that we've had to deal with the city on dealing with the shall we say the integrity of our neighborhood, and to keep it where families can raise their children and invest their money into homes where the investment won't decline, but it will increase. Mm-hmm. And so these things are the things that I'm concerned about. And so going back several years, we've had to deal with the city. Let's go back to when we put in the 4-lane street. That's Beach Street, which is right in front of my house. And at that time, without even telling us or anything, they put no parking signs all the way up and down both sides of the street. There wasn't that many cars using the street at that time, but there are a lot of streets in town where they allow parking. And for people who had families and friends, there was no place for them to park unless you parked them around the corner and down the next block. And so it really was a disadvantage of not being able to park in front of your house. So I got a petition up, and I got a petition and had most of the people sign it that went from Pine Street up to Shelbourne. And we had to go before the city council and get them to vote to allow parking on that side of the street. And that was not what the planning commission was wanting. And so we had to fight in order to do that. Another example was they wanted to put up 3-story apartments, just like they're doing now, right across the street from me. And in that short area between the street and the houses, which used to be the boys' houses in ISSES, but which are single family homes now. And so again, at that time, as a neighborhood, we all had to get together and we had to fight City Hall and go before the planning commission and everything and do exactly what we're doing now. And we had to work hard to get that stopped.
It's
And so
exhausting.
that's another example of
That's
this.
really exhausting. And now One Plaza, wasn't there, they were trying to get a liquor store in there at one time?
That is right. And exactly, that's another example of where they tried to bring in something that was not conducive to this neighborhood. It was just simply the wrong project at the wrong place. And it seems like they consistently try and put in the wrong projects in the wrong place. They're not considering consistently what about is best for the integrity of this neighborhood. If you go from, let's just go from, okay, let's go down to Willow Street and Fort Jesse, and you can go all the way up then to Rab Road or beyond. And then in the other direction, you can go from Linden Street all the way out to Tawana Avenue. And this is a block of houses right in the center of town here that is all single family residential homes. Mm-hmm. There are some other taller buildings, like there are some two stories, but the thing of it is they're all single family that I'm aware of. And that is, of course, we do have the area that was the ISU's married student housing, but that was not one of those buildings was over 2-story. And it was, and so, but we, in this whole area, we haven't got any tall houses. This is tall buildings like that. Mm-hmm. The view, the integrity, all these things. This is an area right in center town that they consistently try and, in my opinion, mess it up.
Yeah.
Without considering what the neighbors and the citizens of Normal really desire. That's why we moved here.
Yeah. Well, every time I talk to, Normal residents, and I lived there, right? What's beautiful about Normal is that they are, there's a lot of single family residential areas. So you get that small town feel, but you're in a larger town with a larger population, and there's, Pheasant Ridge, there's Collie Ridge, there's, all of these smaller subdivisions, and you get that small town feel. And you've built a community there. And now they want to, introduce these three-story apartment buildings. Now I want to talk about the covenant. Was there a covenant? Now, what are you in a subdivision that's next to this housing development, the Essex housing project that is planned? It goes before the planning commission, folks, on May 8th. You better show up and you better make your voices heard if you live in that area. Yeah. But is there a housing covenant? Because a lot of times what I'll see is there's this covenant, like the developer, comes to a covenant and says, hey, we won't develop this land in this way, and it's going to stay single family. And the reason for these covenants is to ensure exactly what you're talking about, that your property values don't decrease. So these covenants are typically like a deed. It's a separate recorded document that's designed to maintain property values and ensure a certain standard of living. So was there some sort of housing covenant? Was it with the developer? Do you know?
Well, the housing development was with the Collie Ridge people.
Okay.
The covenant was. And so it did not cover like where I'm at, where we've been here 51 years in our home. And so we do not have to deal with a covenant, but I am aware of the covenant that they have up there by talking to the people that live there. And that's my, that's how I know about it. But the covenant to me is it's a guarantee to the people that when they invest their money that they worked hard for, and they want to raise their family in a neighborhood where the children can play in the street. They all do. Maybe they shouldn't, but they do. Let's face it. And they, you know, it's for the benefit of the people who buy those homes. It's to take care of the fact that, you know, they have a promise there. And but what they've done on this covenant, though, they've gone back and they've said, "Oh, we've fixed it now." From what I have seen and heard, they've really fixed nothing, because you still have the 3-story buildings there. And what it looks like to me is they took the single family homes or duplexes that they had planned for just a few of them, and they just moved them to the outer edge of the property that backed up to these homes, and then now they're going to build the 3-story apartments just on the other side of the street. Well, so they put another house between them. To think that really changes the covenant is ridiculous.
Yeah,
exactly. Everything's there.
They're trying to hide it. They're trying to hide the 3-story building by putting a bunch of, you know, single family looking duplexes around the building. But that doesn't fix the core of the issue, is that there's going to be this tower that's essentially towering over all of these single families residents. And it's going to be, let's be honest here, Dean, right? Students, young, possibly drinking, and not to mention, we just saw something happen at ISU just over this weekend, the Bone Student Center, where there was a shooting. Now, to be clear, folks, the suspect is not a student, but I mean, this kind of activity happens quite a bit. Being an ISU Redbird, you know, it's not a place you want to walk around at night because a lot of people are drinking. It was never really my scene. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you, Dean, when I went to school there. But the facts are the facts, right? There's, you know, student housing is notorious for drinking and late night partying, and it's loud. I lived in apartments, First Sight apartments, actually. Now, this is Young America. I lived in First Sight apartments, and I mean, I never got sleep. I mean, they were like duplexy type. It looks just like they're actually, what are they called? The Oaks. That's where I lived. And it was loud all of the time. I mean, and there was parties going on until, you know, midnight. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And, you know, these people who live in these subdivisions, they didn't sign on for that. That's why they came to a covenant with, it's the developer, the Collie Ridge residents did. Now, Dean, I've got to take a quick break, but we are going to be back for our streaming friends. We're going to have extra content for you. Dean and I are going to have a conversation. I'm going to get to know Dean. We're going to get to know Dean this hour. And we'll be back because coming up, I do want to ask you about Young America and, you know, NIMBY. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. Dean, have you heard of NIMBY?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So people are accusing, or they're accusing you of, you know, fear mongering, not wanting change, not in my backyard. You know, I don't want this stuff in my back. And really, they're going to probably accuse you of ageism. You know, you don't want the young kids or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, change has consequences. And, you know, I'm going to ask you what your message to NIMBY would be here on the other side, Dean. Okay, so we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Okay, Dean, how you doing? Good?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Good. First, I just want to ask you, so 51 years, that's a long time.
Yes.
So how many of these projects have you seen that haven't actually started? So I talked a lot about that on the show today, how a lot of these housing projects seem to be planned, right?
Right.
But the developers never actually break land. they eventually could, and this is a potential, and that's why there's concern here. Because if they do wind up building this 3-story apartment complex, that's going to have major consequences. But, they say there's a housing crisis. Dean, do you believe that there's a housing crisis?
I really don't know how to answer that, but the way I feel is that what formula are they using to say that we need more housing and we have a crisis? There's got to be a formula out there. And I've heard that they take the number of jobs that you have in Bloomington and Normal and how many people that represents. And then they say, do we have enough housing for all of these people that work in Bloomington and Normal? Well, there's got to be a factor in there that all these people that work here do not necessarily want to live here. And that you have small towns and communities. You've got rural people. You've got people who have established homes other places, and traveling to Bloomington and Normal is not a problem. And so it's wrong to assume that everybody wants to live here. And if everybody wanted to live here, I would be thinking that they would be building more homes around here. But not only, it's what kind of homes would they want? They would want single family homes or a place to raise their family. If they work here, they would be here for the long term. They're not like students that are coming here. There's nothing wrong with students. I worked at ISU. And so I've always had a good relationship with the students at ISU. And I had 3 of my own children went to ISU. And so I surely have nothing. I think ISU students are a great bunch of people and kids. The only problem is that the students are here for a different purpose, and they're at a certain point in their life that they're getting their education. They're young, and with that, parties and this other stuff just come along with it. They're away from home for the first time. They're spreading their wings, and this is where you have problems with the student. It's just simply going to happen, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we live in a reality, right? And, this is obviously Young America Realty. This is going to be student housing. So, and like you said, you don't have anything against ISU. You don't have anything against the students. You don't have anything against that. It's just that, hey, there was this covenant with Collie Ridge. This is a big deal. Okay. Number one. Number two, you abruptly changed the single family zoning to multifamily.
Yes.
Number three, there seems to be very little consultation with the actual residents who currently live there. And, with the housing crisis, I'm going to go like this because you said they're going off of the number of jobs. We know State Farm, there's a ton of remote jobs. I don't know if those are factored into this economic development study that they did. And that if that's the case, then, you could work from pretty much anywhere. And why would we want to try to entice remote employees to come to Bloomington or whatever it is, the commuters, to come to Normal? When they've already, like you said, established homes elsewhere. And, it's just not a reality that everybody who works in Bloomington is going to live in Bloomington. You've got remote employees. You've got, and it's like, I don't understand. And I think at the end of the day, human beings, they do like that commuter lifestyle. They like to, drive in to where they work. They want the suburb life. Maybe they live in a rural community where their kids can run, and to try to, force people to live here. And they're doing this in Bloomington because they're trying to incentivize people to come here now. Actually, developers, they're incentivizing developers, cutting fees and things like that, tax incentives. They're going to try to incentivize developers to build these multifamily housing to fit everybody in the city. And it's just not and you're going off with a study to try to get the commuters to come here. It's just not reality. I do have to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back for our radio friends. Hold on, Dean.
Okay.
Hey, you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you being here. Before we took the break, I'm talking with the Normal resident, and his name is Dean. Dean, how do you say your last name? It's Kunz?
Kunz.
Kunz.
Kunz. Kunz.
Kunz, Dean Kunz. He's here with me, and we're getting to know a lot about each other. So you actually were you working at ISU, and you have children who went to Illinois State University?
Yes, I worked at ISU. And I also have 3 children that went to ISU. I worked there for many years. I retired from ISU. I started out as an electrician, and I was working as an electrician with local Union 197. And then I went to ISU, and then from while I was working there, I moved into a management position, and I worked into an estimator and project manager for construction and new construction and renovation. And so I was in the watching over the construction and renovation of the buildings and the work going on at ISU. So I have a lot of experience with students, and I like students, and they are wonderful people. They're here for the reason to get education and looking for forward to their future. But at the same time, it's a time of life where they've just left home. They're spreading their wings, and when it's time to it's time to study, and when it's time to party, it's time to party. And so and they do it well.
Yeah.
And so it's just again, it's the wrong project in the wrong place. I know people who live close to other housing that's real close to ISU, and they have homes that are close to it. And believe me, they don't get any sleep either. And what's happened to their property value and what else, in their opinion, is definitely not good. And
right.
so it's I just feel like that, the students are going to do what they need to do is let off steam. And our neighborhood is not the place to do that. That's the whole thing.
Well, and there's somebody on the stream here, they actually commented, and I think that this has some truth to it. They said apartments aren't housing, they're prisons. So that's a bit of an extreme, but yes, I don't think human beings are really meant to live on top of each other. Maybe that's just a philosophical position I have. But anytime you stack human beings on top of each other, it's going to A, get loud, B, there's going to be an increase of crime. Potentially, anytime you get a large group of people together and you stack them on top of each other, being somebody who lived in apartments for quite some time, I know this, right? Anybody who lives in apartments, there's, disputes, there's things that happen, you hear everything. And I don't think that human beings are necessarily supposed to be living on top of each other like that in an apartment style, but they serve a purpose, and it's just not for this area. It's very it's an outlier for the area. It's going to be this big tower, 3-story building. We're talking about the Essex project. Now the developer here is Young America. Okay, it's Worthington is what it's called, LLC. That is the partner or the operator of this LLC is Young America. Now we're going to get into some of this, Dean, because I think that this is interesting. A letter was sent to Mercy Davidson on April 14th from Collie Ridge residents requesting a meeting with the developer and the town to allow the public to ask questions. So it's a whole nother can of worms where the public isn't, in conversations with the developer. And I think that you've got Farnsworth Group, which is the consulting firm that is partnered with this Worthington LLC. Farnsworth Group, according to Open Secrets data, has contributed to multiple Illinois politicians. And I don't know how you feel as a resident, if you feel like your voice has been heard. We're going to get to that here on the other side. I'm going to take another quick break, but I also want to get to this housing crisis. We talked a little bit about it on the stream, where there's this EDC, this environmental development, or this Economic Development Council. They came up with a study and they talked about commuters, people who work in Bloomington. They don't necessarily live in Bloomington. And actually, the city of Bloomington is considering tax incentives. They did this actually at their last meeting, I think. And they want to provide tax incentives to developers to build out these huge, multifamily units. So that way the developers, they get the tax incentives, and then they can try to entice the commuters to come here because they want the estimated revenue or the taxes from the commuters. And I think that it's just disingenuous to suggest that there's a housing crisis because not everybody in Bloomington who works here wants to live here. Okay, it's just a really weird, piece of this study. Where they're going off of this study where, everybody who works here must have a house here. And that's why there's a housing crisis. We have to remember State Farm, remote employees, maybe people drive in from 20, 30 minutes away, something like that. And to say that there's a housing crisis, I don't know, based off that data point, I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, right? And sometimes people say here in Bloomington that this is fabricated. And, I think that we have to first develop all of these housing projects that are planned, because none of them have really gone up. There's a ton of just stalled housing projects because the developers haven't broken ground. Maybe if you get those up and running, it will address this housing crisis. Okay. And not to mention there's vacancies still in many apartment buildings, the ISU apartment complex. There's vacancies right near where you live there, actually. So we've got to take a quick break, but we're going to come right back. Okay, Dean?
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back. You're listening to Cities 92.9. All right, folks, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Dean is with me this morning. You can pay me to live in Bloomington Normal again. Yeah, Chris. So, Dean, really quick, we were talking about the housing crisis. These planned projects, they haven't actually broken ground on these planned projects. Now, a couple of them, let me just pull them up here. There's an approved plan on RAB east of Linden that has no development other than like removing some brush in in some of the old buildings. There's also that has not been developed fully. There's this adjacent subdivision, Vanderbilt Drive is what it's on. So you're more familiar with the area, Dean. Is there planned projects that they've said are going to go up and be developed, and they're not even developed yet, right?
Well, yes, the ones that you mentioned are the ones that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As you know, yeah. That one over there on Linden and Rab, I understand that person that owns that has left the area and moved to Tennessee, and that he's trying to sell it, and he doesn't even want to develop it now, and he's trying to sell it. That is a scuttlebutt that I have heard.
Interesting. Okay, so they say that there's a housing crisis, housing shortage. Do you know why maybe developers aren't actually breaking land? Is it because there's red tape and it's hard to actually develop this land once it's all said and done and approved?
Well, I think that probably the fact it's a money issue. Can they borrow the money or get the money that's necessary to build these subdivisions? And they And so when they go to borrow money, these banks and loan institutions, they have to investigate and come up themselves with, is this a viable project that this contractor or developer can make good on and make his payments? And I think that probably it's a holdup of the bankers, who are much smarter than I am, of course. If they are saying, wait a minute, is this something that they want to invest money in? And I believe that they're having a hard time getting the money to support their project once they've got approval for it. They get their loan, or they have the money to buy the property, but then to actually put it under construction, a lot of times your loan companies, they probably want you to, that they just simply are protecting their investment. And I think that maybe they're having second looks at these investments. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of things could probably contribute to that. They don't think that they're going to get their return on investment, maybe because there's a mass exodus of population in Illinois. Maybe
whole
because the
state.
property taxes are high here.
Excuse me?
Maybe because the property taxes are so high, specifically in McLean County, actually. So I think we rank, like, I just shared it the other day. It was like 50 counties in the nation. They have the highest property taxes. On that 50, like, we're even above Cook County when it comes to property taxes, which is insanity to me here in McLean County. And when it comes to property taxes, we're the highest in some of the highest counties in the nation. Like, we're beating a lot of counties when it comes to property taxes. So that is going to keep people from wanting to move into the area. It's going to keep people from wanting to pay rent. The rent's going to go up, right? The landlord, Young American Realty, are they going to be able to, pay the property taxes on this property? Somebody's going to pay the property taxes on this property. Are they going to be able to pay that property tax? In order to pay that property taxes, their rent has to be through the roof. Are people going to pay $2,000 a month in rent, in this area? And especially when you start to weigh in, hey, the population exodus, the mass exodus from Illinois, we've lost millions in population over the last couple of years. The bankers are probably like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this because we're not going to get a return on investment, because they won't be able to fill these apartment buildings. Right. So that's what leads me to say, like, it's got to be like this housing shortage thing is, I think it's completely fabricated, and like, maybe not completely fabricated, but mainly the housing crisis. If you want to address this, you want more affordable housing for people, you should probably cut back on the property taxes. So that way we can develop this land and not charge an arm and a leg for rent, because that's why the rent's so high. We got to we're going to come right back, Dean. Hold on one sec.
All right.
Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. The news talk blooming to normal. Now, it's very important, this show, and I'm doing a series, folks, of multiple interviews over the next couple of days over this Essex complex. Okay, I've had numerous residents reach out to me, telling me about how this apartment complex is planned for the area. It's the corner of Shelbourne and Beach, currently under developed land. It's right next to the Collie Ridge subdivision. They're looking at a 3-story apartment buildings, 500 plus parking spot lot. I mean, this is going to be pretty big. And we were talking with Dean. Dean is a resident in the area, Dean Kunz, and he was just telling me, I don't understand. It seems like there's a lot of planned projects, housing projects, to address the housing crisis and affordable housing, and they approve all of these projects, but none of them seem to be getting done. And I named off a couple of them. So there's one on Vanderbilt Drive. It's a cul-de-sac, and it isn't fully developed yet. There's an approved plan on Reb east of Linden, and there's no development to date other than, they cleared out some brush and some old buildings. There's a large development on Parkside, north of College. It's still farm ground. So there's obviously an issue with developers not actually breaking land or breaking ground in building these things. And I feel like you should probably pause on the approval until these things actually get built. And, can you speculate, Dean, as to why some of these things might not be getting built?
Well, I think there's several things to look at. And one of the probably most important one is financing. The contractors and the developers, once they buy their land and they get approval, they have to, a lot of times still they're working on the financing of the actual buildings that they're going to construct. And so they go before these bankers, and these bankers have to look at the project. Is this a viable project that they can get their return of money on? Is it in a place that it should be? Is the contractor going to uphold his end of the deal and pay back the money that they are borrowing from them? And so on the financial end, you've got people that are looking at this with eyes that are not necessarily coming from local eyes or from the city officials that really want this for some reason. They are looking at it from a different point of view, and that is, can they invest in this project and it be a success?
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of, I think there's the other set of eyes from the outside looking at this and saying, wait a minute, is this something that we can invest in, and it's good for our bank, and it's good for what they are doing with their money. And so I think it's probably a financial situation that is playing an impact on them not being able to get the money to finish it. I believe I've heard that the person who owns the land that they want to build apartments on Linden Street and Arab Road, that I've heard that person has left town and is now wanting to sell that land for someone else to develop. And so that tells a story there. You got to ask why. Why would someone go to the extent of they did of clearing the land, trying to get the zoning, and then, wait a minute, I'm going to sell this and let someone else do it. These are all red flags, and it should be a red flag to our city officials. And so I believe it's just a matter that when you get outside eyes looking at this, then things seem to change. So this ought to tell us a story. This ought to alert us to, there must be more to this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said, it's, the property taxes are really, really high. So these banks are probably not going to be investing in anything in Illinois because the policies and the taxation is insane. In McLean County specifically, it's higher than Cook County. When I say that, people are like, what? Yeah, the property tax rate is higher than Cook County here in McLean County, and it's higher than the statewide average or the statewide average for property taxes. It's pretty expensive they say affordable. We need affordable houses here in Bloomington Normal. Okay, well, how do we do that? It's probably cutting back the property taxes, making it easier for these developers to, pay these property taxes so they don't have to charge the exorbitant rent. Number one. Number two, this mass exodus that Illinois is facing, millions in population have left the state. Number three, I think that there's another third part of this is this red tape. So and maybe this is all a scam. So Governor J.B. Pritzker actually, not that long ago, he said, we need to build housing in every Illinois community. And, but yet
Easy to say.
they're the same people who say we need to build all this, but we're also going to red tape it all. And we're going to implement policies and taxation, corporate income tax, and we're going to implement these policies that are hurting these developers who would actually develop the land. So, and, there's some red tape out there. And I know that after talking with some developers in Illinois, they'll tell me here's what they have to do before they actually break ground. They have to get study after study done of how the environmental impacts of developing that land. So it could be something so silly like the red ants population or something like that. You break the ground, and how is that going to affect the bird population or the ant population? I don't know how hammers and construction is racist. I don't know. So they have to get all of these studies done by the government in the public sector before they can actually break ground. So, part of this, I think, is a way for those people to get paid and to conduct those studies. So you have to go get a study done, and you have to work with people in the Environmental Protection Agency, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and you have to kind of get their approval after having certain amount of studies done and conducted and finished. And those people in the IEPA, they're all getting paid to do those studies. So somehow, or in some way, I think that it's a big scam. I'm not going to lie to you, Dean. I think that they're just straight up trying to get as much taxpayer money out of this, and it's all just, and they're never actually planning to develop the land.
Right. They just have to go and to keep their job. They can't always say no to everything, so they come up with these things to prove that they are investigating situations, and in reality, I agree, it's a scam.
For people that just keep making, because if you never break ground, you can never start making money. It feels fake. It just feels fake to me, right?
Right. I also agree with that. It's just it's just hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
What we have here, it really is, and to think that that everybody is just standing in line to move to Bloomington and normal. It's nice for advertising, but in reality, it's just not there as far as I can see.
Yeah, maybe it's like if I come out and I say that there's a housing crisis or a housing shortage, it is a form of propaganda in the sense that if we say that, it makes it appear as if there are people waiting in line, and maybe the Governor J.B. Pritzker is doing the same thing. You need to build because we have so many people here, and he, of course, has denied the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and the U.S. Census data. That there is a population exodus, that people are leaving in droves in the state of Illinois. So maybe this is a way to kind of bolster Illinois communities and try to fake it till we make it kind of thing. Let's fake the population. I don't know.
Well,
maybe.
Yes, you can see it around you, even your own friends and people that that have moved away, or you hear it all the time about, people will say, well, this friend or that friend left and they went down to get a job down south somewhere or whatever. And yes, I agree. I believe that the state is trying to protect itself and give a false image of what's actually going on in the state of Illinois. And yes, I believe it's a tragedy. We have to look at things clearly and honestly, and sometimes that's hard to do. You want to do something so bad that you get to a point where you can't look at it with open eyes, and it seems to be clouded over. I think decisions are being made for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and from a place of just wishful thinking, maybe. So we've got to take a quick break, Dean. But when we come back, I want to talk with you about one more thing about the developer and the conversations with the town. You know, have you been participating in conversations with the town? Has the town been reaching out to the residents that currently live there? Have there been meetings between the developer and the residents? We're going to get to that and the transparency really around the process of this Essex subdivision plan for the corner of Shelbourne and Beach. I'll be right back. You're listening to Cities 92.9. All right, folks, we're going to be right back. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to let Dean get a sip of coffee. I'm going to grab a sip of coffee, but we're going to be right back in just a couple of minutes. Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Dean, it's been a great show. Before we go, though, I want to ask you, do you feel that the town of Normal, the developer, have they been having conversations with the residents surrounding this Essex housing project that's planned for the corner of Shelbourne and Beach? We've been talking about that this morning, and I want to elevate your voice. Do you feel like it's been transparent? Do you feel like you've been heard by your government and by the developer who's planning to break ground here right in your neighborhood?
Well, they have not had many meetings about it. The last meeting that I'm aware of and went to was a year ago, and they presented the project at that time, and you had the architectural office people there, and then plus Young America people were there, and it they just were giving out information that I felt was just really wasn't true. We asked them about problems such as the schools. We said, isn't this going to be overloading the schools? And where are these kids going to go? And what about the tax money that's going to take to increase the schools and the busing and everything else? And one of the representatives said, "Oh, there's no problem at all with the schools. I'm very close to the school situation. I'm aware," he says, "that Unit 5 hasn't got any problems with the capacity of the schools. It won't affect it at all." Well, how ridiculous. You talk to anyone that's got a child in any of the schools around here, and our schools are just swamped with children. They're overflowing. There's more children going into these schools than what the capacity should be. And so that was just strictly false information. One person from Young America said, "Oh," he said, you ought to feel lucky that it's us that is going to be managing these apartments. We do such a wonderful job." And I thought, "Oh, that's not what I've been hearing from people." Just with
Just take our word for it.
Yeah,
Kind of deal. Take our word for it. Well, Dean,
Yeah.
we've got to go. We're at the end of the show, but I do want to tell people, hey, there is a planning commission meeting May 8th, and then it's supposed to go before the council May 19th, the Normal Town Council. So make your voices heard, just like Dean, and we will always elevate voices like yours, Dean, because we care about the residents of Bloomington Normal and not the powerful elite, the people who actually live here for 51 years. You should be treated
Yes.
better, Dean. Well,
I
you have a
agree.
blessed day. Thanks so much for joining me. You guys have a great rest of your day. We're going to be back tomorrow morning, and tomorrow morning at about 7 o'clock as well, we're going to have another resident from the area joining us to talk about the issue. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Bye-bye. Love you.
Okay. Bye.
All right, Dean. That's it for the radio program, but I appreciate you coming on, and just take our word for it. And I saw Young America Realty, I don't want to bash them, but it's true that a lot of the, college students first say Young America Realty, a lot of these college students don't particularly have fantastic experiences with these, realtors. They don't have great experiences. So, it's subjective. You got to be objective. Come at this, here's what we talked about with Unit 5 schools. Okay, they're going to allocate, of their 72 bus fleet, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. They're going to make sure that they have these 3 buses allocated for these neighborhoods, and that's going to now include these 250 apartments. And come out with the numbers. Don't come at me with this subjective crap where it's don't worry. We talked to the school and it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Young America is great. And we are going to make sure that we fill this with great tenants, this unit with great tenants.
Right.
Like, okay, but even with the tenant situation, you could probably come out and say objectively, here's how we go about our process of a tenant. You know, have they even told you that's like, we have a background check. You have to pass maybe even a credit check in order to get into these apartments, or, you know, what's the criteria of the tenant? Are they going to be good tenants, or are they going to be tenants that you find, you know, who are bad tenants, you know, have an eviction history? Do they have an eviction history? You know, that kind of stuff like that. And there's tangible, objective things that they could do, I think, to ease the minds of the residents there. And it sounds like they're just trying to say, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. Take our word for it.
You know, let's face it. Anyone who's going to be renting in there is short term if they're a family. I mean, you know, they are not there for the long term like homeowners are.
Mm-hmm.
They're there for the short term.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that they're bad people or what they're doing is wrong. The fact is, when you move into a huge apartment complex, that is not the place that you're going to raise your family.
Yeah.
That's a transition place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to me, it's just a transitional a building project for people. The students are transitional. The people who live there with families, they're transitional. And that would, you know, that's one thing that I wanted to say but didn't. But because, you know, it's you think we're going after the people. No, it's just their time in their life and where they're at.
Yeah. Well, Dean, thank you so much for joining me on the program here. Folks, smash that like button, share this out with your friends on social media. Dean, we'll talk again soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, Dean. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Bye-bye.